On a chilly spring afternoon in Seattle, Washington, 38-year-old Daniel Harper stood outside a neighborhood grocery store, staring at a birthday invitation clutched tightly in his hand. In just 1 week, his 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, would celebrate her birthday. It should have been a joyful occasion, but Daniel's heart was heavy. 2 years earlier, his wife, Emily, had passed away after a long illness. Since then, Daniel had done everything possible to be both father and mother to Sophie. Yet every birthday, every school event, and every family gathering reminded Sophie that her mother was gone. This year, Sophie had only one birthday wish. "Daddy," she had whispered one night, "can I have one birthday where it feels like we're a real family again?" Those words broke Daniel's heart. 3 days later, while sitting alone at a small cafe downtown, Daniel noticed a young woman quietly reading a book near the window. She smiled politely when he accidentally dropped his wallet beside her table. Her name was Grace Morgan, a 31-year-old elementary school teacher known for her kindness. Daniel hesitated before speaking. "I know this is going to sound crazy." Grace looked up curiously. "Can you pretend to be my wife for just 1 week?" Grace nearly dropped her coffee. "I'm sorry, what?" Embarrassed, Daniel quickly explained everything. His late wife, Sophie's birthday wish, and his desperate hope of giving his daughter one unforgettable week filled with happy memories. "I don't want to replace her mother," Daniel said softly. "I just want my little girl to smile again." Grace remained silent for several moments. Then she asked one question. "Does Sophie know this is pretend?" Daniel shook his head. "No, but after her birthday, I'll explain everything honestly." Grace looked into Daniel's tired eyes. She didn't see deception. She saw a father who had exhausted every option to make his daughter happy. Finally, she smiled. "Okay, but only for 1 week." The next afternoon, Grace arrived at Daniel's home carrying homemade cookies. Sophie's eyes lit up the moment she opened the door. "Daddy, who's she?" Daniel knelt beside his daughter. "This is Grace." Grace smiled warmly. "I've heard so much about you." Within minutes, Sophie was laughing as Grace helped her decorate cupcakes in the kitchen. They painted birthday signs, baked cookies, watched animated movies, and even danced together while cleaning the living room. For the first time in years, laughter filled the house. Each evening Grace returned after work, helping Daniel prepare decorations and wrapping birthday gifts. Neighbors began assuming they were a real couple. Even Daniel almost forgot everything was temporary. One afternoon, while shopping for balloons, Sophie quietly slipped her tiny hand into Grace's. "Can I ask you something?" Grace smiled. "Of course. Will you stay forever?" Grace's smile faded. She didn't know how to answer. That evening she sat alone in her apartment, staring at an old family photograph. She had grown up in foster care. She never knew what it felt like to belong to a family. Helping Daniel and Sophie had unexpectedly awakened something she had buried long ago. On Sophie's birthday, the backyard was transformed into a magical garden filled with colorful balloons, fairy lights, and smiling neighbors. Sophie wore a beautiful blue princess dress. Before cutting the cake, she looked at Daniel and Grace. "I have one wish." Everyone became quiet. "I wish both of you would always stand beside me." Daniel looked at Grace with tears in his eyes. Neither of them spoke. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Grace packed her small overnight bag. "Our week is over," she whispered. Daniel nodded sadly. "I understand." As Grace reached the front door, a small voice called from upstairs. "Please don't go." Sophie stood on the staircase holding her favorite teddy bear. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I know you're not really my mommy." Grace froze. Sophie smiled through her tears. "But you're the first person who made Daddy laugh again." Silence filled the room. Daniel wiped away his tears. "Sophie." She walked downstairs and hugged Grace tightly. "You don't have to pretend anymore." Grace couldn't hold back her tears. Neither could Daniel. Months passed. Grace continued visiting every weekend. Then every evening. Eventually, there was no pretending at all. Daniel and Grace slowly fell in love. Not because of a promise they made for 1 week, but because of the countless ordinary moments they shared afterward. 1 year later, on Sophie's 7th birthday, Daniel knelt beneath the same string lights that had decorated the previous party. Holding a small ring, he looked at Grace. "This time, I don't want you to pretend. I want you to stay forever." Grace smiled through happy tears. "Yes." Sophie's joyful scream echoed across the backyard as she wrapped her arms around them both. For the first time since losing her mother, she finally understood something beautiful. Families aren't always created by blood. Sometimes, they begin with a stranger, a simple act of kindness, and one impossible question that changes 3 lives forever. And every year after that, Sophie told everyone the same story. My parents met because my dad asked the bravest question in the world.